So Jannik Sinner is your 2024 U.S. Open champion, second Grand Slam of his career, and a second of this magical 2024 for him. It's not over yet, but, certainly Jannik Sinner's 2024 is entering the all-time realm, definitely at least of young guy great seasons, along with probably topping this century as far as non-Big Three seasons, with still potential to add to his record to this point, with Asian swing and fall indoor hardcourt season still looming, the scene of the crime, where this great winning run actually began for Jannik Sinner pretty much 1 year ago exactly. And now you fast forward a year, and Jannik Sinner has reclaimed his grip upon this year after Carlos Alcaraz sort of snatched back the spotlight in the middle of the year with the Channel Double and his exploits at the Olympics. The two end up splitting the majors for 2024, and certainly that first Grand Slam final between Sinner is up top on the wish list for tennis in 2025. But in totality now, Jannik Sinner probably locks up number one for the season and, lays claim to it being his year. And certainly as far as this U.S. Open run in particular goes, on paper, it was a very straightforward, uneventful path to glory here. On the surface, it's seeming like one of those survival to the fittest U.S. Open title runs akin to, 2017 Nadal, 2018 Djokovic, where they were the last man standing. And, although there were a few moments of suspense along the way, for the most part, by midway through the tournament, it seemed like it was pretty much never in doubt that they would be hoisting the trophy. But obviously, in Sinner's case, this one probably meant at least as much to him as his first one down under in Australia to begin the year. I mean, I think tennis-wise itself, a lot of us just had him a little bit under the radar, as much under the radar as you can be as the world number one, and pretty much consensus best hardcourt player in the world since he won Australia. But yeah, I mean, there were questions with the fitness, with the health. Was he right enough to go all the way? Recency bias, of course. Carlos Alcaraz had won the last two slams, had a tremendous summer. Novak Djokovic, last we had seen him, looked like vintage Novak for the only time really all year to this point. When we had last seen him heading to the U.S. Open, and that was, of course, the Olympics. And then, of course, the details of Jannik Sinner's whole doping episode, the two positive tests, became public, I think, the day after the Cincinnati final. My view on that I gave in my last video. I do give Sinner and the anti-doping governing bodies the benefit of the doubt. And, to me, the result of Sinner's case being reversed and him not having to miss any time, mainly being down to differences in process, him, his team, his legal team, being able to so speedily appeal the result, as well as nailing down the source, it also being a trace amount that would be consistent with their story of it getting into Sinner's system via massage over open wounds for a wound from his physio that he used the spray to treat. That's basically, my 2 cents. I don't think, it's really a binary thing. It's never going to be clear-cut, really, to anybody except the people in Sinner's team, Sinner himself. But off the evidence we have, as of this week as well, the World Anti-Doping Agency also deciding not to appeal his case again. Obviously, the Bartolotti case as well, the Italian doubles player with a similar situation and a similar outcome in a much, much more low-profile case. At the end of the day, I don't think it's a binary thing. We can only go off of the evidence that we have. I certainly can understand the skepticism, the doping warning on the label, why was Sinner's team so careless, etc., to be in possession of this substance. around a guy that is the world number one and in the spotlight so constantly. But at the end of the day, only Sinner and his team are truly going to know what happened. To me, the evidence is in his favor, and I give him the benefit of the doubt. But, I certainly can tell in the discourse following this event, even after he's won the title, skepticism still does loom over it. And yeah, again, this was something that we were curious to see how he would deal with it throughout the tournament with the added scrutiny. Would he be able to compartmentalize? And certainly he did that wonderfully throughout the course of those 2 weeks. And yeah, at the end of the day, him lifting the trophy, him getting across the finish line, it seemed to mean that much more to him and his team, both visibly emotional in the victory, for different reasons this time. In Australia, it was because it was the first one, and that one's always so important, so sweet. But also on the tennis end of things here, I think it does highlight a bigger point here where Sinner has ascended to a point on hard courts where you would probably truly only say there are 2-3 guys on tour right now that really can require anything higher than cruise control for Sinner to be able to beat them on the surface. And for the most part, that is what this title run was. It was cruise control. I did think he was sensational in the 4th round against Tommy Paul in the portion of the match that I caught. But yeah, other than that, he never really gave more than what was required of him, and the baseline level was more than high enough to have a great deal of separation between him and the rest of the field. And it's a field that, I know the names won't jump out as much at the back end, but it still did include Tommy Paul, a fringe top 10 guy on hard courts. Daniil Medvedev, who, all of us were expecting it to be the match of the tournament. And yeah, Daniil was not at his best for most of that quarterfinal. But even a Daniil Medvedev off his best, I don't think, anybody else aside from maybe Alcaraz because of the matchup. But, even at that, nobody is throwing 6-2, 6-1 sets in a major match on a hard court against Daniil Medvedev. And yeah, I think at the end of the day, this US Open showed that to beat Jannik Sinner on a hard court in one of these majors, you're going to have to be one of the best baseliners in the world, but you're also going to have a very, very well-rounded skill set that is firing on all cylinders when you play against him. I think you saw Medvedev trying to employ such a game plan where he was trying to find some balance between, what he's been known for throughout most of his career with the human backboarding, and trying to blend that with, the increased aggression we saw from him in their Australian Open final match. And in this particular match, second set aside, his attempts at trying to dictate more were just not sustainable. They were leaking too many errors and, made for a viewing experience that was very unlike Daniil Medvedev with the amount of regulation balls that he was missing. But then you get on the flip side, you see people with only one half of that equation. Tommy Paul had the variety, brought it. I thought in spades in their 4th round match, continued to show off his great hands and effective net play against even the best of the best, as he has done for the better part of the last 2 or so years, coupling it with his great athleticism, world-class movement, but just lacking the punch, the power, just that little bit. And then on the flip side, you had the Drapers and the Fritzes in the semis and finals, who did have the punch, brought their world-class baseline game to the table, but unable and not comfortable in doing all that much else, or at least unable to do it for long enough in Draper's case, because he did have some success with the variation, coming forward a little bit more. At least it felt like more so than Fritz, but not certainly long enough to really put Sinner in a spot of bother. And yeah, like a lot of us felt heading into the final, and this goes for pretty much any big hitter on tour right now, is that fighting fire with fire, trading blows with Jannik Sinner, there's just no path to victory there. He's the best at it. He's the most consistent. He has the most rally tolerance, along with being able to just continually reproduce those crisp, big blows. And it's paired with the best combination of movement that there is for that archetype of player. And Sinner, to me, I know that the comp for a lot of people is he looks Djokovician, just trading off, a little bit of Novak's variety of movement for greater pace with Sinner. That's not really how I see Jannik Sinner. Jannik Sinner, to me, he seems to have at this point filled out his potential of being a guy like Wawrinka with the effortless, easy power that moves better, returns better, and is just overall more consistent. And how scary of a player is that, considering, those guys, the Wawrinkas, the teams, it was on their day an ability to take the racket out of anybody's hands. And Sinner has that type of rare power that you see so seldom across history. It is your Wawrinka, your Delpos, a Dominic team where the ball just sounds different when it comes off the racket. But he is unique in the sense that no guy that hits that big a ball has really moved this well or made a play style that is founded on the easy power and just innate elite ball striking. I don't think anybody's made it look as high percentage and easily replicable as Jannik Sinner consistently has over the last year span. And definitely, seeing it in action again, in person actually in Cincinnati, but also across these two tournaments, Cincinnati and the US Open, where he was able to regain some of his best tennis. There's definitely amendments to be made and, a reevaluation in my statement this summer after Wimbledon, where, I felt we were in a place where Carlos Alcaraz, to me, had the highest ceiling on any court that wasn't a quick hard court or indoor hard court. That title has to belong to Sinner. It has to. He is without a doubt the, undisputed king of the hard courts right now. And even though, I would say there's really just the two guys that I think are capable right now of unseating him, I would only think it would be temporary. One of them is Djokovic. He's 37 going on 38. Alcaraz, aside from Indian Wells, he just didn't bring it on hard courts this year. I don't think he's this poor on hard courts. I didn't think his showing this year off Indian Wells on hard is indicative of what he's capable of. But certainly I don't think anybody is going to match the sustainability, give you the, match in, match out consistency over the coming years on the surface to the extent of a Jannik Sinner. So with that, I am very excited to see what Sinner can do to close this season. You guys know I'm a big nerd for, all-time discussions, and right now, statistically speaking, and strictly statistically speaking, Jannik Sinner, he already is having one of the greatest seasons of all time. I know that it may be hard to rationalize that right now as we're still in the middle of it, but, how could you not put it in that space? You have 2 majors, 2 masters. He won a title on grass as well, quarters at least at all 4 slams. Semis are better in 3 of the 4. The win-loss is outstanding to this point. He's already cracked the 10,000 point mark on the ATP. He's in elite company there. As I said to begin this video, this is probably the best non-Big 3 season of this century, and even stacking it up against some of the post-prime Big 3 seasons where, they kind of had to pick and choose their spots and ended up coming away with multiple majors. Context always matters, but, just from a statistical standpoint, you could very well say this Sinner season already has eclipsed some of those. And given, stylistically the fit and, of course, how he performed in the fall last year. I think all of us would be surprised if he does not add to what is already, an astounding amount of accolades this year. All of which pretty much all but guarantees year-end #1 for Sinner, and deservedly so. It really is wild, how quickly this has happened for him, going from being a guy that was still at the beginning of 2023 in a little bit of a developmental stage, fine-tuning the auxiliary aspects of his game around the, elite innate ball striking, and then this time a year ago pretty much putting the finishing touches, with the final piece being his fitness. And a year later now, he is #1, multiple-time major champion. The ascent is now complete, and him seemingly only getting started as this beast of a player we know him today. Future of tennis definitely in great hands moving forward. I think the major breakdown this year reflects as such. That'll do it for this video. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed. If you did, it would be much appreciated if you could drop a like, help this video perform better in YouTube's algorithm, and also subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Thank you all again so much for watching, and of course, I will see y'all in the next one.